that time of the month again where we highlight the best songs, the best albums, the best EPs of the past month. I actually don't have technically an album that came out in February that I would call my album of the month, because I did go back to 2 albums that came out in January that really rocked my world. Yes, we're going cheesy now, rocked my world. So my album of the month will technically be a January release, but because I played it so much in the month of February, I'm gonna bend the rules and pretend that that's okay. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna start with the lifelong, decade-spanning artists who have been here forever. Animal Collective. They have a swirling, bizarre and creative and exotic and unique discography that has taken them beyond 20 years, and they are still putting out music that is interesting in the year 2022. Can you believe it? These guys have been around for so long, almost the entirety of my life. These guys have been around, to be honest. Like, I haven't been listening to them since, you know, I was born, obviously, but they are nearly as old as me. That's kind of crazy. It still feels like they're new and fresh. They've got the ideas. They're not just, you know, making boring music. Even some of their weaker albums, or their albums that aren't considered as good, were still pretty creative, were still pretty fresh, and they've always made some interesting music. It can't go missed. This was a really good album. Next one I mentioned, Melt Yourself Down. These are one of the coolest jazz fusion bands out there, and by jazz fusion I mean they incorporate jazz elements into punk music and dance punk music that you may remember that was so big in the 2000s. If you just bring those ideas together with the jazzy sounds that they come out with, it makes for some really good music, would you believe it? It's not quite as good as their debut, but their debut was just such a great pace setter that it's going to be hard to top that. But their consistency over the 4 albums they've put out is really underrated, to be honest. These guys put out some really good music. It's so much fun. The opening track I think is pretty fantastic as well. Yeah, these guys should not be missed. Big Thief next. Slightly fell short of my expectations, just because I don't think every track was a hit, but there weren't really many misses, to be honest. And I think you run the risk when you just pour out all of your material into such a lengthy, sprawling album that, you know, of course it might not be quite as good as the previous stuff that is more succinct and is more straight to the point. The similar thing happened with Beach House, although I think Big Thief put out a much better album than they did personally, and even still this has some of the best tracks to date on it. The first 6-7 track run is stellar. It's some of the best songs ever, and that run is one of their best runs ever as well across an album. It's a really good album. I don't want to downplay it at all. I think even still, some of the weaker moments could actually grow on me in the future, and this could end up being an album that I end up loving, because this has happened with Big Thief before. I've always had a weird relationship with them over time. I've ended up appreciating their work more and more as time's gone on. This album in the next 6 months could do the same. In the next year, however long it takes, I just at least know right now, in this moment, this is a very good album. Didn't get round to reviewing Conway The Machine's album, but I wanted to mention it in this video here, mostly because I think it is such an achievement for him at this point to be putting out albums that are of this quality, and yet he puts out a lot of music. You know, he's pretty much consistently dropping at least an EP or an album once a year, and the consistency has barely dipped below, like, you know, a solid album. It's insane, to be honest, and I've been saying since like 2019 that he is the best man that is part of the Griselda crew, and I think, to be honest, this album proves it. I think I've finally been vindicated in that, because this is really good. Lyrically, he's getting sharper. I think his 2020 album was better overall, musically and lyrically, to be honest, but I think tracks like Stressed, I think, are tapping into really interesting topics that we're seeing come through more in Conway's music. It's not just the typical gangster type lifestyle that you were hearing on his earlier mixtapes. He's expanding his craft even further than that. I really like So Much More as well, where he's talking about his role in the world of hip hop music, and he's talking about how he doesn't need to just, you know, spam his music in comment sections. He just wants his music to organically grow, and it did that. And if the music is good enough, it can do that. And Conway has proven that his music is good enough, and it has grown to new heights as well in terms of success, because he is a bigger name these days, which is great to see. But I want to mention the final track too. This track, instrumental, oh my god, the piano is glorious. This is one of the best Conway tracks I've ever heard. Falls short a little bit in places, the album overall, which is why I didn't fully review it, and it's why I wouldn't give it like an 8 out of 10 that I was hoping I'd give it, because I think some of the features actually aren't that great, and some of the instrumentals feel a bit too familiar for what we've heard before, but still, it's a really good album. It's great, to be honest. But yeah, I think, you know, for me, my favorite work of his has come in the past, but even still, the work is still at a high level. Now we're on to the 2 albums that actually came out in January, but I want to highlight them because they were so good and they really did become big albums for me in the past month. Grace Cummings, what a discovery this was. Shout out to John, who found this album. It wasn't me that found it. But yeah, this right here is a really impressive album from an Australian artist. She has some affiliation with Tropical Fuckstorm as well. I think she's going on tour with them. And you can kind of see why. There's an energy to this album and her vocals that feels so unique and so on its own that you can't really find many comparisons in the current state of music to really point at Grace and think, oh yeah, she sounds like that. Think of her as like more of like a folk leaning lingua ignota, just that kind of uniqueness to a voice that you don't find in many other places. There's so many great influences coming through from the world of Americana music. I got, you know, aspects of Robbie Basho on this album. I got aspects of Nick Cave at times, Leonard Cohen. There is a lot going into this album. The detail that she's packing in the lyrics is fantastic too. It's a really good listen. This was such a good find. And as always, I'm going to end with my album of the month. We are here for the Punomo album, which is one of the most exciting and fun albums, and easily the most fun album I've heard in 2022 so far. This album right here, man, is just such an electrifying listen from start to finish. These guys are from Finland and they are out here doing retro soul, retro funk. They're bringing back the classic days of that era, and they are doing it so much justice. They are doing it in a way that just makes the whole album sound so exciting. The energy never slows down. Just think of the classic days of this genre, this era, and you know, you're getting the best aspects of it in a modern context. It's just so much fun, to be honest. You know, I love this kind of style of music, and when an artist gets it right, in the same way that Yola did last year, in the same way that Silk Sonic did last year too. But when you amp it up to the speed and the velocity, you know, the velocity of the tracks here, that it just amps up to a new level, and it's just so much fun from start to finish. And that's it. These are the albums I wanted to highlight for February. It's been a really good month. The music of the year so far is still remaining at a really high level, I think, and there's lots of exciting releases to come on the way too. I will put a little screen grab of songs up there so you guys can see what my favorite songs have been, and don't be fooled. There is more reviews to come that will be very positive. Our music is kicking into gear, and we'll be getting some big releases on the way pretty soon. So thank you for watching as always. Tell me your highlights of the month, what your favorites were, what you think of the ones I picked here. Have a good day and goodbye.